6:45 in Trinidad and Tobago. Well, racism in any context can be a difficult conversation to have for many reasons. Some like to avoid it completely, others find it very traumatizing, and indeed there are those who believe the problem does not exist. When it comes to sport, the subject matter, of course, is not new. From cricket to football, the beautiful game, and every other game in between, you can find examples of racism in sport. The topic is the focus of a roundtable discussion this afternoon, hosted by the Equal Opportunity Commission in collaboration with the Trinidad Tobago Football Association. The event will also serve as the launch for the Pass the Ball Challenge. Member of the senior men's national football team will speak on the discrimination faced on and off the field. Remember the game against Mexico at the Gold Cup that finished a goalless draw and had to be halted at least 3 times in the second half? Well, to give us some perspective on that dialogue that is coming up this afternoon, we're joined by the chairman of the Equal Opportunity Commission. He is Ian Roach, and we also have with us Amiel Mohammed, who is the acting general secretary of the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association. Mr. Roach, very good morning to you. So first and foremost, what time is the dialogue this afternoon?
It is starting at 5:30 p.m. until 7. It goes from 5 to 7.
And how can people follow this roundtable discussion? Because we know everything is virtual these days.
On the website of the Equal Opportunity Commission or the TTFA's website, and you will get a link and you can join.
And what are you hoping will come out of this discussion? Because as we know only too well, Mr. Roach, when we talk about the issue of racism, as we said in our introduction, it covers many different areas, many different aspects. What are you hoping will be covered this afternoon?
Well, first of all, what we are hoping to cover is to highlight again, it's a difficult topic, as you said, a hard topic, but it's something that needs to be brought forth, that people can understand, people can be enlightened as to the savagery of commentary of racial slurs and so made against players and sports persons, wherever and in whatever form of sporting activity that is taking place. So we want to bring this conversation that people can understand, be more sensitized to that. I mean, you're watching a sport, you're watching players, but they are human beings. They are involved in entertaining you, right? But nevertheless, they have their dignity to maintain. They have all the attributes of a human being, and we need to have respect. We need to see people in whatever form and fashion, wherever they come from, as human beings, right? And treat them with the dignity and respect that is necessary. And as we have all witnessed as well in the European Cup that just concluded a month ago or so, where the 3 black players were the kind of statements that were made against them that really belittle them as human beings. That's because they were not they were seen as the poor guys for England not achieving their aspirations. And very often than not, you find that anytime players in a mixed team succeeds in bringing forward the victory that is so pursued by whatever country or whatever nation, they are all seen as inclusive. But once that doesn't happen, there's the racial, tones come up, the racial slurs, the behavior, it's ugly. And we are hoping in the Equal Opportunity Commission, in partnership with the TTFA, to start a discussion of that nature, so as to make it much more obvious, to expose the hideousness of it, because sometimes it's manifest and sometimes it is insidious, it is subtle. But we need to have this conversation, and we need to have this conversation as wide and make it as wide as possible, and take it not only within Trinidad and Tobago, but throughout the Caribbean, and put an appeal. This is the hope to start. Let's start here. Let's start as a catalyst of what inspired between the Mexican and the Trinidad World Cup match, as you just highlighted here. But so we want to use this opportunity. Out of negative must come positive, and this is what we are hoping to achieve in the Equal Opportunity Commission, because it's our mandate. It's a significant part of our mandate is to bring an end to discrimination in all forms and fashion wherever it is from. And we think that this is a good opportunity for us teaming with a sporting enterprise to do this. And as you know, and many people will say, sports like music bring people together. So we must not let that attribute of sport be hijacked by a few persons who are ill-informed, who are ignorant, I would say, and who are insecure, to tarnish the attributes of sport, to bring people together in a meaningful and joyful way.
And Amiel Mohammed, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us as well. Just give me your perspective on this dialogue. Because obviously this is an ongoing situation, and the feeling is that some might argue, well, we don't really have no issue of racism in sport, at least in football in Trinidad and Tobago, but the broader international issues would have been highlighted with the Gold Cup experience and as Mr. Roach mentioned, the Euros and the aftermath of the Euros. And indeed, the argument is that FIFA really ain't interested in dealing with this in a serious way. But what do you hope actually comes out of this afternoon's discussion?
Thanks again for having me and us for here. A lot of the time, these issues are a mirror of society, whether it is global society or our local society, as much as we might want to accept it or not accept it. So it's really important that as sporting organizations, I think Mr. Roach identified it, that sport and music bring people together. So it's part of our responsibility to be those beacons to kind of champion these kind of conversations. We saw the incident with Mexico, and it brought about the racism in sport and discrimination from a personal and Trinbagonian perspective. So from our point of view, we want to continue the discussion, magnify the discussion, especially from our personal interactions. The panel discussion will see the same players who were victimized, especially off the field, with a lot of the social media barrage of racial insults. They will get a bit on the psychological, the impacts from them, so that further players would then get a better understanding of experiences, ugly experiences, but experiences that hopefully they would be able to learn from at the same time, and that we could try to push the lever in a more positive direction.
But before I go back to Mr. Roach, are you satisfied that the global authorities are doing enough? And it's good to know that Marvin Phillip, the keeper, Alvin Jones was part of the squad. There'll also be Dr. Crystal Jane Verasamy, who is involved with the EOC. Kenwin Jones, our former national striker and captain, and senior women's footballer Naomi Guerra will be involved in the discussion as well. But when you really look at it, just for example, that Mexico game, Mr. Mohammed, when you have people saying the nastiest things about you while the game is in progress, and then you stop the game and then you resume, but the insults continue. Are you satisfied that enough is being done to protect players from these vicious attacks that they continue to experience, and not just at international level, but at club level all over the world?
Definitely not satisfied, and enough is there definitely needs to be more. Overall, it is an issue that keeps coming up, whether it is insidious or whether it is on the surface consistently, and it will keep coming up unless different sort of approaches are taken, different conversations are had, and the conversation can't stop at the conversation level either. There needs to be an actionable activity attached to those conversations, coming out of those conversations, so that we as a society, we as a sporting entity, can start to push things in a more positive direction. We're definitely not satisfied with the approaches and the outcomes from that global perspective of which we were subjected to, and nothing could ever be enough when it comes to tackling this topic.
And therefore, I mean, how much longer do people of color have to tolerate this sort of thing? Because some people will say, you can't walk off the field because you'll get censured, or FIFA go do for you and whatever. But if you play by the rules, Mr. Mohammed, and I hope you understand the context I'm putting it in, if you play by the rules, you're basically not doing enough to stop these racists, or those with those racist tendencies. So maybe you have to break the rules and just simply walk off the field to get the point across.
Sometimes situations will come up where the hard choices have to be taken. We see that we're going to have a hard conversation today. I think these are some of the kind of topics and approaches, especially when you get the input of Kenwin Jones, who has played at that extremely high level. We get his take on it, of what he thinks should or should not be done in that kind of context, what he thinks would have an impact And I think it's important to have these kind of conversations, because I think even TTOC President Brian Lewis kind of referenced particular points that the quote unquote smaller nations or smaller countries, they have a different set of rules for them. And is this one of those situations where a particular action might be deemed necessary? A lot of these things would be discussed and would be very interesting.
It should really make for a very interesting discussion. Again, it's at 5:30 this evening. Racism in Sport, the hard conversation, a roundtable discussion. You can go to the website equalopportunity.gov.tt for more information. And before time runs out on us, Mr. Roach, what is your perspective on this? Because again, these discussions keep coming up, even right now in South Africa, and we all know the history of apartheid in South Africa. They're having their own equivalent of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission in cricket in South Africa, and a number of black players and players of color, East Indian players and so on, are coming out to say how they were treated all these many years and had to endure it, and are still enduring it. So, Mr. Roach, at the end of the day, at the risk of sounding repetitive, what are you hoping comes out of this to actually change the environment where you're basically told that you could do this to highlight it, but don't go to the next extreme because you have to play by the rules, Mr. Roach?
But Fraser, thank you very much for that. As a matter of fact, I wanted to pose that question to you as a well traveled and experienced sports journalist. I'm sure you may have experienced some sort of racism while you were in a commentary box. I mean, because you get it you get it not only on the field by players against players and by spectators, you also get it in the commentary box, right? And have you ever been subject to something like that? Because your voice is also an important voice. You are a voice of reason. You are a voice that is very insightful in the public. And this is what we are trying to achieve, to have people like yourself who have a wide experience globally to be able to lend your voice and also give insightful experiences and probably suggest solutions how this can be achieved. Because I mean, you will have been all about you have been cricket, you have been football. I mean, you are well experienced in having a viewpoint that could be shared among many people. Right, so that's interesting. So if before the interview is finished, you can say something on that, I would really appreciate that. But what I will say, he who controls the purse controls the sea. And until people are able to feel the consequences of those actions in a severe way, it will continue to manifest itself as ugly as it is in many instances. So therefore, I think the owners, the management, the promoters of sports, the professional bodies, they must not only just do PR about racism, they must be able to do something that has a significance that people will feel the pinch, will feel the way it hurt, and force them to pause and do something. That is what I think the conversation is necessary to inform people, to enlighten people. But you can pass the laws and so until the hearts and minds of people are changed. Unfortunately, these things will continue to be part and parcel of
Indeed, Mr. Roach, time is
life.
about running out on us, but I want to answer your question in the few seconds that we have available to the top of the hour, because of course people will want to join that discussion. It's never happened to me openly and overtly, but very subtly. And essentially what you have to do is to put people in their blimmin' place. As far as and to answer the other question as to the issue of what needs to be done, because the global authorities tolerate this, people have to take drastic action. You have to break the rules to get this message across. This idea that you could gradually wean people off those racist tendencies is doomed to fail, because they will continue to hold that big stick over you that if you only do this, you will get sanctioned. Well, at some point, people of color have to determine what is more important, playing the game or getting the point across that you can't continue behaving the way that you behave by just walking off the field. And that is a big challenge, I know. But just to answer your question, put people in their place, whether subtly or overtly, and let them understand where you come from. But Mr. Roach, thank you very much. Mr. Mohammed as well, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much, and well said.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. It's 7 o'clock in Trinidad and Tobago as we go to the news.